Hello coders, I hope you are coding well. In the previous video, we wrote the code to create an admin account on the startup of our application, and we worked on the sign up API as well. In today's video, we will work on the login API and we will generate the refresh token and JWT token in the response after the validation of user email and password. So let's get started. Before creating the API, let's create the DTO first. So we'll right click here and we'll click on Java class and we'll name this DTO as sign in request. In this request, we need one email and one password. So we'll write as private string email, and we will duplicate this and change this to password. After this, let's annotate this with the data annotation. So we'll get the getters and setters for both of these properties. After this DTO, let's create another DTO for the response of sign in API. So we'll name it as JWT authentication response. In this DTO, we need two properties. So first one is token, and let's duplicate this and rename it as a refresh token. Let's annotate this with data annotation as well so we can get the getters and setters. Now let's go to our authentication service implementation and start writing the method. So we'll write here public, and the return type for this method should be JWT authentication response, and let's name it as sign in, and in the params we should accept the sign in request. In this method, we need to verify or validate the user's email and password, and we can do that by authentication manager. So let's go and create the object for that. So we'll write private final authentication manager, and let's use now this authentication manager here. So we'll write authentication manager dot authenticate, and here we can give a new username password authentication token, and in this token we can provide the Gmail. So we can write here dot get email and password. This authentication manager will validate our email and password, and it will return the exception if the email or password is wrong. And after this we can fetch our user from our DB, and we can use JWT service to generate the token. So let's do that. So we'll write var user is equals to user repository dot find by email, and here we can give sign in request dot get email, and after this we need to use or else throw, and in this or else throw we can return illegal argument exception with the message email or password is invalid. After this we can call our JWT service now, but we need to create the object for that. So we'll write here private final JWT service. Now let's create a variable here JWT and use that JWT service dot generate token, and we'll give here this user. After the JWT, we need to get the refresh token as well. So we'll duplicate this method and we'll rename this variable as a refresh token. And here instead of generate token, we'll call a method generate refresh token, and we'll give the user in the params and a new hash map. Now let's go and create this method in JWT service. To create the refresh token, we can just duplicate this method and we need to rename this to generate refresh token. And in the params we need to accept the claims. So if we want to set some extra claims here, we can get these in this param. Now after this let's call the set claims method and pass these extra claims in the params. After this one last change we need to do in this generate refresh token. We need to extend the time, so we'll replace this one value, and this value is basically equal to 7 days. So our normal JWT token is valid for 1 day and our refresh JWT token is valid for 7 days. Now let's copy this and mention in JWT service. Now as our JWT and refresh token is ready, and let's create the JWT response object and set the details and return. So we'll write here JWT authentication response dot set token. We'll pass it JWT and let's duplicate this and do the same for refresh token. At the end we need to return this JWT authentication response. Now let's copy this and mention this in authentication service. After this let's go to our authentication controller and create the endpoint. So we'll use the same post mapping, and path for this API should be /sign in. Let's start writing the method. So we'll use public and we'll return response entity of type JWT authentication response. Let's name this method as sign in, and in the request body we need to accept the sign in request. Here let's return response entity dot OK, and we'll call authentication service dot sign in. Let's pass the sign in request as well, and we are done with this sign in API. Let's run our application. As you can see, our application is up on 8080 without any errors. Let's go to the Postman and call our API. So as you can see, I am in the Postman, and let's update this email to admin@gmail.com, and let's set the password as admin and hit the send button. As you can see, we successfully got our token and refresh token, and this means that our APIs are working fine. This is it for this video. In today's video, we created the sign-in API. We created a method to generate the refresh token in our JWT service. And in the next video, we'll create the API to generate the refresh token.